This is the installation video for cavity mechanism number 22. When installing pieces in glass domes, I always use a towel with the ends rolled in to keep the dome from rolling away during the installation. Now you'll want to take the dome and put it on the towel, and the next step is to clean the dome. This is going to be the only chance you have to get all the fingerprints and lint out from the inside of the dome. After the piece is installed, it's really difficult. Here I'm using ammonia and newsprint. Newsprint seems to leave a little less lint on the inside than paper towels and even some microfibers. And the ammonia doesn't really leave too much of a residue on the glass. It's really important that you don't leave much of a residue on the glass because the rubber has a hard time sticking to it. You really want to make sure you get everything cleaned off as best as possible. Now that that's done, take the assembly and make sure that all the points are pointing inward and that the rubber pads are pointing out. That'll help you when you're putting the piece into the dome. You can deal with it later, but it's a lot easier to do it now. When I'm looking at the rock, I'm finding natural features on the rock that I can start with. I'll take the first point and put it in one of those features, and that helps me kind of position the rock in a way that it's not going to slide out unexpectedly while I'm positioning it in the mechanism. You'll want to practice this a few times away from the dome just to make sure you don't risk damaging the glass dome. Practice it until you're pretty comfortable manipulating the rock within the pins. The whole time I'm keeping a little bit of inward pressure on the rock to compress the springs a little bit. That'll hold it in there. You can see them not compressing the springs all the way, but just enough to kind of keep the rock in there. Once you have it in there, you'll start to look at it and kind of eye it down the center and from the side and kind of get it into a position that you're happy with, where the points seem like they're fairly evenly spaced around the sides of the rock, and the rock is in kind of a nice vertical position. Once you're happy with it, go ahead and move it carefully into the dome, and at this point situate your hands to where they can kind of hold tension on it but not be totally in the way of the installation. It's a little bit tight, but it does go in. It'll knock against the sides a little bit, but as long as you're being fairly careful with it, it won't break the glass. And you're going to go in until the lower rubber pad is about an inch and a quarter from the bottom of the glass. You can make adjustments later on. Once it's in there, it should stay fairly well. I mean, it can slip around, and you'll see later on in the video it does slip around a little bit. But once it's in there, I'm kind of adjusting them by pulling up a little bit. You can kind of pull them or push them in, and that'll move the triangular top of the piece around in the dome. Once you have it set, put it on the base and kind of take a look at it from the side and see if all of the feet are the same distance from the bottom of the dome and the base. And if not, you'll want to adjust it. I'm also looking down the center and trying to see if it looks centered in the dome. When you decide which way you want to go, you can put it back. It may even be easier to not put it all the way down. You'll see later on I do end up having it slide a little bit more than intended. But you can move it a little bit and position it, put it back in, take another look at it, spin it around. This piece is pretty stable once it's in the dome, so you can move it fairly easily. Looking down the center, and I'm going to try to adjust that, but you'll see the whole thing shifts when I set it down this time, which is a good case to not set it all the way down or to be a little bit slower. I kind of set it down a little harshly there. The other thing you can do, which I'm doing here, is when you're positioning the feet, after you move them, just press a little bit to seat the rubber against the glass. That helps. If the rubber's seated a little bit better against the glass, it's going to keep it from slipping. The other thing is, if you're really having a hard time with the feet slipping on the glass, I would take the whole thing out and clean the dome again. And sometimes when I've had that issue, I'll even just clean it with no cleaner solvent at all, just a dry rag, and just scrub whatever residue is on there, just with a newsprint or paper towel or something, just to kind of clean the area of contact and try to get any film or residue off the glass. Also check the pads, make sure there's no lint or other debris on the pads. That would keep them from seating on the glass as well. At this point, I'm fairly happy with the position of the piece in the dome, and I'm going to just clean off my fingerprints on the outside. If you have gloves for handling photographs, they work really well, the cotton gloves, and I do use those a bunch, but it's pretty easy with this piece to just clean off your fingerprints afterwards, and you can get rid of most of the stuff that way. Here's a look at the piece installed. I'm just kind of going around it, looking for even spacing off the base to the feet, looking down the top, and trying to see if it's pretty evenly spaced in the dome. That's it. Here's another instance of me installing it. Sitting down, checking the mechanism, looking at the rock, kind of assessing it and how I want to hold the rock in the piece. Rotating the feet. And putting the rock in. When the rock is in, and if you want to rotate it a little bit, you can kind of hold pressure on 2 points, lighten up on one, and rotate it, and then put pressure on the point that was just light, and then you can kind of work around the rock a little bit like that, where you lighten tension on one point, rotate it on the other two, and retension it. And that's a good way to kind of position the rock without taking it all the way out. Again, I have a little bit of pressure, not a lot, just a little, sliding down the center. And once I'm happy with it, go ahead and put the piece in. And I apologize for my shaky hands. They shake a lot. And once it's all even, take the piece and set it on the base. And again, you want to take a look, rotate it, look all around, make sure it's centered in the base or in the dome. And once you're happy with it, that's good. Or if you're not, pick it up, adjust it a little bit. Again, pulling a little bit of tension off the feet to move them, and rechecking the other ones, pushing a little bit to seat the rubber on the glass, taking another look at it, and that's it for that installation. Removal of the piece. Removal of the piece is pretty much the opposite. Start by taking the piece, putting it on its side on a towel. You're going to start like you're adjusting the piece, and this is a way to make sure that the rubber pads aren't stuck. You're kind of loosening them up, sliding them towards the opening. Once you get them a little bit closer to the opening, you're going to go ahead and kind of squeeze everything in and slide it out. Take it away from the dome and set it down and support the rock while you take it apart. And that's how to remove the piece from the dome. That's it for all the installation instructions. Please contact me if you have any questions. Thanks.